The space station called Haven 9 was not a place for dreamers. It floated at the edge of lawless space, far from any government that cared about rules or justice. Miners came here to spend their wages. Refugees came here to hide. Criminals came here to disappear. The station was dirty, crowded, and dangerous. But for Ho, it was home. Ho walked through the lower markets with a large bag over his shoulder. The bag held everything he owned in the universe. Inside were hand-carved wooden puppets, a small music player, colored cloths, and strings of tiny lights. These were his tools. These were his weapons. In a galaxy full of laser guns and warships, Ho fought his battles with stories. He was 32 years old, with tired eyes and rough hands. His black hair was always messy, and his clothes were patched in many places. He did not look like much. Most aliens who saw him thought he was just another weak human, lost in a galaxy that had no place for his kind. Humans were new to the stars. They had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago, and they had nothing special to offer. Their technology was primitive. Their bodies were fragile. They were short. The other species tolerated humans but did not respect them. To most aliens, humans were like children who had wandered into a room full of adults. But Ho had found something that made aliens stop and stare. He had found something that made even the mercenaries sit down and listen. He had found the power of human stories. Tonight, like every night, he set up his small stage in a corner of the lower market. He hung his colored cloths from pipes overhead. He arranged his puppets on a wooden board. He placed a small bowl in front for credits. Then he began. "Come and listen," he called out in the common galactic language. "Come and hear a tale from old Earth, a tale of love and loss, a tale of courage and sacrifice." A few aliens stopped walking. They looked at him with curiosity. A large creature with 4 arms crossed 2 of them and waited. A small furry being with big eyes sat down on a crate. A group of miners, their faces gray with dust, gathered behind them. Ho smiled and lifted his first puppet. It was a young woman carved from wood, painted with bright colors. He had made her himself, using only a knife and patience. "Long ago," he began, "there lived a girl named Shim. She was poor and her father was blind. They had nothing but each other." His hands moved the puppet gently. His voice rose and fell like music. He told them how Shim sold herself to sailors to buy her father's sight. He told them how she threw herself into the sea as a sacrifice. He told them how the Sea King, moved by her love, sent her back to the world of the living. He told them how she found her father again, and how his eyes opened at last when he heard her voice. By the end, the market was silent. The 4-armed creature had uncrossed his arms. The furry being was wiping its large eyes. One of the miners, a tough woman with scars on her face, quickly looked away so no one would see her expression. Credits fell into the bowl, more than usual tonight. Ho bowed low. "Thank you. Tomorrow I will tell another tale. The story of 2 brothers, one kind and one cruel, and the birds who rewarded and punished them." The crowd slowly broke apart. Ho carefully packed his puppets and counted his earnings. It was enough. It was always just enough. He walked through the winding corridors of Haven 9, heading for the upper levels where his sister lived. Park Mi was a medic who ran a small clinic for those who could not afford the station's official hospital. She had come to Haven 9 3 years before Ho, following a lover who later abandoned her. She stayed because the people needed her. Ho came because she was the only family he had left. The clinic was quiet when he arrived. Mi was cleaning her instruments, her gray-streaked hair pulled back in a tight knot. She was 40 years old, with the same tired eyes as her brother. "Good crowd tonight?" she asked without looking up. "Good enough." Ho placed a small stack of credits on her table, "for the clinic." Mi glanced at the money and shook her head. "You need to eat too, little brother." I ate. He had not eaten, but she did not need to know that. She knew anyway. She always knew, but she took the credits and said nothing more. Ho sat down on a worn chair and closed his eyes. His body was tired, but his mind was restless. He thought about his life and wondered if this was all there would ever be. Performing in dirty markets, sending money to his sister, watching the galaxy spin around him while he stayed in one place. He was not unhappy, but he was not complete either. Something was missing, something he could not name. A loud noise echoed through the corridor outside. Shouting, running footsteps, the sound of metal crashing against metal. Me looked up sharply. Station security. Ho went to the door and looked out. He saw armored guards rushing past, their weapons drawn. Behind them came others in different uniforms, not station security. These were aliens he had never seen on Haven 9 before. They were tall and thin, with pale silver skin that seemed to glow faintly. Their faces were cold and empty of emotion. Me said quietly, standing behind him, "Military hunters, I've heard of them." "What are they hunting?" "Nothing good. They don't leave their territory unless something important escapes." She pulled him back inside. "Stay out of it, Ho. Whatever they're looking for, it's not our problem." He nodded and closed the door, but his heart was beating fast, and he did not know why. Something in the air felt different tonight. Something felt like it was about to change. He helped me close the clinic and then walked back to his small quarters in the lower levels. The corridors were unusually empty. Everyone was hiding from the hunters. As he passed an old cargo bay that had been abandoned for years, he heard a sound. It was soft, almost nothing. A breath, a whisper of movement. Ho stopped. He knew he should keep walking. He knew me was right. This was not his problem. But his feet would not move. His hand reached for the cargo bay door. His fingers touched the cold metal. And somewhere inside, something broken was waiting to be found. The cargo bay door opened with a long, painful creak. Ho stood in the darkness, waiting for his eyes to adjust. The air inside was cold and smelled of rust and old oil. Broken crates were stacked against the walls. Dust covered everything like gray snow. He should not be here. The hunters were still somewhere on the station, searching. If they found him in a place like this, they would ask questions. Questions led to trouble. Trouble led to death. But he had heard something. He was certain of it. Ho stepped inside carefully, his feet making soft sounds on the metal floor. He moved past towers of forgotten cargo. He ducked under hanging cables. He pushed aside sheets of plastic that hung from the ceiling like dead skin. And then he saw her. She was curled in the corner, hidden behind a pile of broken machinery. At first, Ho thought she was dead. Her body was so still. Her skin was silver white like the hunters he had seen, but something was terribly wrong with it. Deep cracks ran across her arms and face, like dry earth that had not seen rain for 100 years. Along her neck and shoulders, there were lines that looked like they should glow, but they were dark and empty. But not like the hunters. This one was young, maybe the age of a human teenager, and she was broken in ways Ho did not understand. Her eyes opened suddenly. They were large and pale, filled with fear so deep it had no bottom. She pressed herself harder against the wall, as if she could push through it and disappear. Ho raised his hand slowly. "I will not hurt you," he said in the common language. "I am not with them." She did not respond. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She tried again, and again there was nothing. Her hands went to her throat, and Ho understood. She could not speak. He took a slow step back to show he was not a threat. "My name is Ho. I am human. Do you understand me?" A small nod, just a tiny movement of her head. "The hunters are looking for you." It was not a question. Another nod. Her eyes grew even more frightened. Ho looked at her cracked skin, her dark veins, her silent mouth. He had heard stories about they were a proud species, perfect and cold. They did not tolerate weakness. They did not accept anything broken. "They want to kill you," he said quietly, "don't they?" This time she did not nod, but her eyes told him everything. He should leave. He should walk out of this cargo bay and forget what he had seen. Helping her would bring the hunters to his door. It would put me in danger. It would destroy the small, careful life he had built on the station. But Ho had spent his whole life telling stories about heroes. Stories about ordinary people who made impossible choices. Stories about kindness that changed the world. What kind of storyteller would he be if he walked away now? "Come with me," he said, reaching out his hand. "I have a place where you can hide." She stared at his hand like it was the strangest thing she had ever seen. Maybe it was. Maybe no one had ever offered to help her before. Slowly, carefully, she reached out and touched his fingers. Her skin was cold as ice. Ho helped her stand. She was weak and could barely walk. He put her arm over his shoulder and half carried her through the cargo bay. Every step was slow and painful. Every sound made them freeze and listen. They made it to the corridor. The lights were dim, and no one was in sight. Ho guided her through back passages he had learned from years of living in the station's lower levels. He avoided the main routes where the hunters might be searching. He moved like a shadow, with the broken alien girl leaning against him. His quarters were small and poor. One room with a bed, a table, and his puppets hanging from hooks on the wall. But it had a door that locked, and it was hidden in a part of the station that most people forgot existed. He helped her sit on the bed. She looked around the room with those large, frightened eyes. When she saw the puppets, she stared at them for a long moment. Ho wondered if she had ever seen such things before. "You are safe here," he said. "I will bring you food and water. You should rest." She grabbed his sleeve before he could move away. Her grip was weak but desperate. She shook her head violently. "Please do not leave me alone." The words were written on her face even though she could not speak them. Ho sat down on the floor beside the bed. "Okay, I will stay." She relaxed slightly, but her body was still tense. Her breathing was fast and shallow. Ho could see that she was on the edge of panic. He needed to calm her somehow. He thought of his mother. She had died when he was young, but he still remembered her voice. He remembered the songs she used to sing when he was afraid of the dark. Without thinking, Ho began to hum. It was an old Korean lullaby, soft and simple. A song about the moon watching over a sleeping child. A song about safety and peace. The alien girl became very still, her large eyes fixed on him. The tension in her body slowly melted away. The cracks on her skin seemed less harsh in the dim light. Ho kept humming. He did not know if she understood the meaning, but somehow the sound reached her. It crossed the distance between human and alien, between broken and whole. It spoke in a language older than words. When he finally stopped, she was calm. Not peaceful, not healed, but calm. It was enough for now. He looked at her cracked face, her dark veins, her silent mouth. He did not know who she was or why she was running. He did not know what the hunters would do if they found her here. He only knew that he had made a choice, and he would not take it back. "I do not know your name," he said softly. "Can you tell me somehow?" She looked around the room. Her eyes found a piece of paper on his table and she pointed at it. Ho brought it to her with a pencil. Her hand shook as she wrote. The letters were strange but readable. Ho looked at the words she had written. "Lyra." "Lyra," he repeated. "That is a beautiful name." For the first time, something flickered across her face. Not a smile, not yet, but something close to it, a tiny spark in all that darkness. Outside, the hunters continued their search. They moved through the station with cold efficiency, looking into every corner, questioning every witness. They would not stop until they found what they were looking for. But in a small, forgotten room in the lower levels, a human storyteller sat beside a broken alien girl. He did not have weapons or power or important connections. He only had his voice and his heart. For now, that would have to be enough. 3 days passed. Ho kept Lyra hidden in his small room. He brought her food and water. He gave her his blanket while he slept on the floor. He watched the cracks on her skin grow deeper each day, and he did not know what to do. The hunters were still on the station. Everyone was talking about them. They had searched the lower markets twice. They had questioned dozens of people, but they had not found what they were looking for. Not yet. On the fourth day, Ho made a difficult decision. He needed help. He could not save Lyra alone. He went to his sister's clinic when no one else was there. Mi was organizing medicine bottles on a shelf. She looked up when he entered and immediately knew something was wrong. "What did you do?" she asked. Ho closed the door behind him. "I need your help." "What did you do, Ho?" He told her everything. The cargo bay, the broken alien girl, the hunters searching for her. Mi's face grew pale as she listened. When he finished, she sat down heavily on a chair and put her head in her hands. "You foolish man," she said. "You absolute fool. I could not leave her there." "You could have, you should have." She looked up at him and he saw fear in her eyes. "They are not like other species. They are hive-minded, connected to each other through some kind of neural network. They do not feel emotions like we do. They do not understand mercy or kindness. If they find out you are hiding one of their own, they will kill me, I know. They will kill us both, and her, and probably everyone who ever spoke to us." Mi stood up and paced across the room. "Why, Ho, why do you always have to be the hero in your own story?" "Because someone has to be." Mi stopped packing. She stared at him for a long moment. Then she let out a long breath and shook her head. "Show me the girl." They returned to Ho's quarters together. Lyra was huddled in the corner of the bed, her knees pulled to her chest. When she saw me, she pressed herself against the wall, her pale eyes wide with fear. "It is okay," Ho said gently. "This is my sister. She is a doctor. She wants to help you." Lyra looked at him, then at me. Slowly, very slowly, she relaxed. She allowed me to come closer. Mi examined her with careful hands. She looked at the cracks in her skin. She studied the dark lines along her veins. She checked her eyes, her mouth, her throat. Lyra submitted to everything without resistance, like a doll that had given up on fighting. When Mi finished, her face was troubled. "The cracks are not physical damage," she said. "They are neural. Her species connects to each other through bioluminescent pathways in their skin. These lines should glow. They should carry signals, information, emotions. But hers are dark." "What does that mean?" "It means she has been cut off." Mi's voice was heavy, separated from the collective mind. For a species that shares everything, being alone like this is, I cannot even imagine what it feels like. It would be like losing all 5 senses at once, like being buried alive. Ho looked at Lyra. She sat on the bed, her head down, her hands folded in her lap. She understood what they were saying. He could see it in the way her shoulders fell. "Can you fix it?" he asked. Mi shook her head. "There is no medical treatment for this. The damage is too deep. Her neural pathways have been destroyed. She can never reconnect to her people. So she is broken forever." "By their standards, yes. That is why they want to dispose of her. They cannot accept imperfection. A broken member is a shame to the entire species." Ho felt anger rise in his chest. "That is insane. She is a living being. She did not choose to be hurt." "That does not matter to them. Logic without emotion, that is the way." Lyra lifted her head. She reached for the paper and pencil that Ho had left on the bed. She wrote something and held it up. "I am garbage to them. Let them take me. I do not want you to die for garbage." Ho took the paper from her hand. He crumpled it and threw it on the floor. "You are not garbage. You are Lyra, and I am not going to let anyone throw you away." Mi watched him with a strange expression. "You cannot save her, Ho. Not with medicine, not with hiding. Eventually they will find her. Then I will find another way." That night Ho sat beside Lyra's bed. She was not sleeping. Her dark eyes stared at the ceiling. The cracks on her skin looked deeper in the low light. He took down one of his puppets from the wall. It was an old man with a white beard and kind eyes. He had carved it years ago when he first started performing. "Would you like to hear a story?" he asked. Lyra turned her head to look at him. She did not nod, but she did not look away either. Ho began. He told her an old Korean fairy tale about a poor woodcutter and a fairy who came down from the sky. He moved the puppet gently as he spoke. He gave the old man a voice, a life, a personality. He made the fairy dance with invisible wings. Lyra watched. At first her face was empty, but as the story continued, something changed. Her eyes grew brighter. Her body leaned forward slightly. And then Ho saw it. One of the dark lines on her arm flickered, just for a moment, just a tiny flash of pale light, but it was there. Ho stopped mid-sentence. He stared at her arm. "Did you see that?" Lyra looked down at herself. She saw nothing now. The lines were dark again. But Ho had seen it. He was certain. His story had done something. His words, his voice, his puppet, they had reached something inside her that medicine could not touch. He continued the story with new energy. He made his voice rise and fall. He added drama and humor and sadness. He poured his heart into every word. And slowly, impossibly, more of Lyra's veins began to flicker. One by one, tiny lights sparked along her skin. They did not stay lit for long, but they appeared. When Ho finished the story, his throat was dry and his hands were shaking. He looked at Lyra, and for the first time, he saw something on her face that looked almost like hope. The next morning, he brought me back to see. He performed again, a different story this time, and again the lights appeared. Me watched with her mouth open. "This is impossible," she whispered. "Human stories are stimulating her neural pathways. Your words are doing what medicine cannot do." Ho smiled for the first time in days. "Then I will keep telling stories. I will tell her every story I know, and if that is not enough, I will make up new ones." Lyra reached out and touched his hand. Her fingers were still cold, but her grip was stronger than before. She could not speak, but her eyes said everything. Thank you for not giving up." Outside, the hunters continued their search. Time was running out, but inside this small, forgotten room, a miracle was beginning. A broken alien girl was learning to shine again, one story at a time. Weeks passed. The hunters stayed on Haven 9, but their searches grew less frequent. They questioned fewer people. They seemed to be losing hope. Ho was careful to act normal. He performed in the markets every night, telling his stories to crowds of aliens who did not know what he was hiding. But his real performances happened in his small room, with only one audience member. Every morning and every evening, Ho sat beside Lyra and told her stories. He told her Korean fairy tales about tigers and rabbits, about kind gods and cruel spirits. He told her legends of ancient warriors and noble sacrifices. He told her myths about the sun and moon, about why the crows are black and why the sea is salty. Lyra listened to every word. Her pale eyes followed his puppets as they danced and fought and loved. Her cracked skin slowly healed as the light returned to her veins. It was a miracle. There was no other word for it. Me came every few days to check on Lyra's progress, and every time she shook her head in amazement. "The neural pathways are regenerating," she said one evening. "New connections are forming. Your stories are literally rewiring her brain." "How is that possible?" "I do not know." Me studied Lyra with scientific curiosity. "They share information through their collective mind. Cold data, pure logic, but your stories carry something else. Emotion, meaning, purpose. Maybe that is what she needed, not just information but feeling." Ho looked at Lyra. She was practicing with one of his puppets, moving its little arms with clumsy fingers. 2 months ago she had been unable to even stand. Now she could walk across the room. She could eat without help. She could even smile, a small, uncertain smile, but real. And she could almost speak. "Ta." Her voice was a broken whisper, but it was there. "Take your time," Ho said gently. "Ho," she said his name, and her eyes lit up with joy. It was the first time she had spoken out loud since he found her. He felt tears in his eyes. He blinked them away and smiled. That was perfect, Lyra. Over the next 2 weeks, her speech returned piece by piece. First single words, then short sentences, then whole thoughts. Her voice was soft and rough, like wind through broken glass, but every day it grew stronger. One night, after Ho finished telling the story about 2 brothers, one kind and one cruel, and how the swallows rewarded and punished them, Lyra spoke more than she ever had before. "In my people, there are no stories," she said slowly. "Only data, only facts. We share memories, but not this." "Not what?" "Not meaning." She touched her chest where her heart would be. "Your stories make me feel something here. I do not have words for it. We have no words for it. My people removed such words long ago." "Emotions," Ho said. "That is what they are called: happiness, sadness, hope, fear, love." Lyra repeated the words silently, tasting each one. "Love, I think. I think I understand that one now." Ho felt his face grow warm. He coughed and changed the subject. "Tell me about yourself, Lyra. How did you end up on that ship? Why are they hunting you?" Her expression grew dark. The lights in her veins dimmed slightly, but she nodded. "You deserve to know." She told him her story. She had been born into the collective, like all her kind. From her first moment of awareness, she had been connected to millions of other minds. She had never been alone. She had never needed to be alone. Then came the accident. A malfunction in a transport ship. An explosion. She had been young, a child by standards. The blast had damaged her neural pathways, cutting her off from the collective. Suddenly, for the first time in her existence, she was alone. "I screamed," she said. "I screamed and no one heard me. Inside my head there was only silence." They did not know how to treat her. Their medicine was designed for collective minds, not isolated ones. And the collective could not tolerate her existence. A disconnected was an error in their perfect system, a flaw that had to be removed. "They called me contaminated," Lyra whispered. "They said I might infect others with my brokenness. They decided to dispose of me." She had been put on a ship bound for a disposal facility, but the ship had stopped at Haven 9 for supplies. In the chaos of the busy station, she had escaped. She had hidden in that abandoned cargo bay, waiting to die. "I wanted to die," she admitted. "The silence was too much. The loneliness was like poison, and then you came." Ho was silent for a long moment. He thought about what she had suffered, rejected by her own people, marked for death because of something that was not her fault, waiting alone in the darkness with no hope and no future. "You are not alone anymore," he said firmly. "You will never be alone again." Lyra's veins glowed brighter. A tear rolled down her cracked cheek, the first tear she had ever cried. She did not even know what it was. "What is this?" she asked, touching the wetness on her face. "A tear. It means you are feeling something very strong." "Is it bad?" Ho smiled gently. "No, Lyra, it is not bad. It means you are healing." The next morning, Mi arrived with bad news. Her face was serious as she entered Ho's room. "A patrol ship has arrived," she said. "Commander himself is leading it. He is demanding that the station surrender stolen property. He is talking about Lyra." Ho's blood went cold. "How much time do we have?" "Days, maybe less. Is not like the hunters they sent before. He is a military commander. He will tear this station apart until he finds her." Lyra stood up from the bed. Her veins were glowing steadily now, soft silver light pulsing beneath her healing skin. "I will surrender. I will not let them hurt you." "No," Ho's voice was firm. "We did not come this far to give up now." "But you are not property, you are not garbage, you are Lyra." He took her hands in his. "And I promise you I will find a way. I always find a way." Outside, a warship hung in space beside Haven 9, its weapons ready. Commander stood on its bridge, staring at the station with cold, empty eyes. He would find the broken one. He would complete his mission. He would cleanse this error from existence. He had no idea that the greatest weapon against him was not a gun or a bomb. It was a human who told stories. Commander was not like the hunters who came before. He was old with silver skin that was almost white and eyes like frozen stars. He had served the collective for over 200 years. He had eliminated thousands of errors, thousands of broken things that threatened the purity of his species. He stood in the station administrator's office, his tall figure casting a long shadow across the floor. The administrator, a nervous alien with too many eyes, trembled before him. "I have already explained," the administrator said. "We searched everywhere. There is no on the station." "Your searches were inadequate." His voice was flat without emotion. "I will conduct my own. My soldiers will examine every room, every ship, every cargo container. Anyone who resists will be detained. Anyone who hides information will be executed." "You cannot do this. Haven 9 is neutral territory." "Neutral territory does not protect thieves." Leaned closer. "Someone stole property, a defective unit that was scheduled for disposal. Until that unit is returned, this station belongs to me." The searches began that same day. Soldiers moved through Haven 9 like a cold wind. They broke down doors. They scattered belongings. They questioned anyone who looked suspicious. The station's residents learned to hide when they heard the sound of boots in the corridor. Ho knew he could not stay hidden forever. If he disappeared from his usual performances, the soldiers would notice. They would investigate. They would find his room and everything inside it. So he continued to perform. Every night he went to the lower market and told his stories. He smiled at the crowd. He moved his puppets with steady hands. He acted like a man who had nothing to hide. Inside he was terrified. Me helped as much as she could. She created a false biosignature using medical equipment from her clinic. When the scanners searched for disconnected life signs, they would find a signal coming from an abandoned part of the station, far from Ho's room. It was a temporary solution, but it might buy them time. "This will not fool them forever," Me warned. "Is smart. He will realize the signature is fake." "I know. I just need enough time to think of something else." But time was running out. The soldiers were getting closer every day. They had already searched the section next to Ho's quarters. Tomorrow, they would reach his corridor. That night, Ho returned to his room exhausted and afraid. Lyra was waiting for him, her veins glowing softly in the darkness. She had grown so much stronger over the past weeks. Her skin was almost healed. Her voice was clear and steady. She was beautiful in a way that made his chest ache. "You are scared," she said. It was not a question. "Yes. Of losing you." Lyra's eyes widened. The light in her veins flickered. "Ho. I know I am foolish." He sat down on the floor, suddenly very tired. "I know I cannot fight I know I am just a human who tells stories. But when I think about them taking you away, about them destroying you like you are nothing," he shook his head. "I cannot accept it. I will not." Lyra knelt beside him. She took his face in her hands and made him look at her. Her eyes were bright with an emotion that had no name in her language. "You have already saved me," she said. "Before you I was empty. I was waiting to disappear. You filled me with light. You gave me stories. You gave me feelings." A tear rolled down her cheek. "Even if they take me tomorrow, I will not regret anything, because I met you, because I learned what it means to be alive." Ho pulled her close. He held her in his arms, feeling the warmth of her glowing skin against his chest. She was so fragile and so strong at the same time. She was the most incredible being he had ever known. "They will not take you," he whispered. "I swear it." He stayed awake all night thinking. There had to be a way. There had to be something he could do. He was a storyteller. Stories were about impossible things becoming possible, about ordinary people defeating monsters, about love conquering fear. As the first light of the artificial morning crept into his room, he had an idea. "Lyra," he said, "tell me about legends." She looked confused. We do not have legends, only history, only facts. What about before you became a hive mind? Before you were all connected? There must have been stories then. Lyra thought for a long moment. Deep in her restored neural pathways, fragments of ancient memory stirred. Things that the collective had tried to erase. Things that still existed in the darkest corners of consciousness. There is one, she said slowly. A very old story about a being called the First Light. It was the original consciousness before the collective existed. It was alone like me. And from its loneliness, it created the hive mind. It gave itself to the others so that no one would ever be alone again. What happened to the First Light? It disappeared. The collective absorbed it, but some say, she hesitated, some say it still exists, that it hides in those who are disconnected, that the broken ones carry its spark. Ho smiled. It was the first real smile he had shown in days. Lyra, you just gave me a weapon. I do not understand. You will. He stood up and began packing the room. Stories have power. You are proof of that. My stories healed you when nothing else could. Now I am going to use a story to save you. How? By reminding thee of something they have forgotten, by giving them back the emotions they threw away. He turned to face her, his eyes burning with determination. They think you are broken, but what if you are not? What if you are something more, something they should protect instead of destroy? Lyra stared at him. For a moment she saw not just a tired human in a poor room. She saw something greater, something that burned with a light of its own. You are crazy, she said. Probably. They will kill you. Maybe. Why would you risk everything for me? Ho knelt in front of her. He took her hand and pressed it against his heart so she could feel it beating. Because you are worth it, he said. Because every life has value. Because the galaxy needs more light, not less. He smiled gently. And because I love you, Lyra. I love you, and I will not let anyone take you away. The tears came again, flowing freely down Lyra's glowing cheeks. She had learned so many emotions in these past weeks. But this one, this overwhelming warmth that filled every part of her being, this was the strongest of all. I love you too, she whispered. I did not know I could feel this, but I do. I love you, Ho. Outside, the sounds of soldiers grew closer. Time was almost up. But inside this small room, two beings from different worlds held each other, their hearts beating as one. Tomorrow, the fight would begin. Tonight, they had this moment. And it was enough. The soldiers found them at dawn. The door exploded inward, and suddenly the small room was full of warriors. They moved with perfect coordination, their weapons raised, their silver faces empty of emotion. Ho threw himself in front of Lyra, but strong hands grabbed him and pulled him away. Do not hurt her, he shouted. She has done nothing wrong. The soldiers did not respond. They dragged Lyra from the bed, ignoring her cries. They bound her wrists with glowing restraints. They treated her like cargo, like something that did not matter. Commander entered the room last. His cold eyes moved from Ho to Lyra to the puppets hanging on the walls. His face showed nothing, but something in his posture suggested contempt. A human, he said, hiding stolen property, how disappointing. She is not property, she is a person. She is a defective unit, a contamination, looked at Lyra with disgust. And you have made her worse, look at her. She is glowing, she is crying. You have infected her with your primitive emotions. I have healed her. Struck Ho across the face. The blow was hard enough to knock him to his knees. Blood ran from his lip. You have corrupted her, said, but that corruption ends now. The defective unit will be disposed of, and you will be executed as an example to anyone who would steal from the. They were taken to warship. Ho was thrown into a cell. Lyra was taken somewhere else, probably to wait for her destruction. He could hear her screaming his name as they dragged her away, and the sound cut through him like a knife. Hours passed. Ho sat in his cell, his mind racing. He had failed. Despite everything, despite the stories, despite the hope, despite the love, he had failed. Lyra was going to die, and so was he. But then the door opened. Two soldiers entered and pulled him to his feet. "The commander wishes to see you," one of them said. "He has questions about your contamination methods." They brought him to his private quarters. The commander sat in a chair of cold metal, studying a. When Ho was pushed into the room, he looked up with those frozen eyes. "I have been reading about humans," said. "Your species is strange, weak bodies, short lives, no collective mind. And yet you spread across the galaxy like a disease. You survive where you should not. We are stronger than we look." "No, you are merely stubborn," said down the. "I want to understand something. Why did you help the defective unit? What did you gain?" "I gained nothing." "Then why?" Ho straightened his shoulders. The fear was still there, but now something else rose alongside it. Something that had kept humans alive through millions of years of hardship. "Because it was right," he said. "Because she was suffering and I could help. Because life has value even when others say it does not." Studied him for a long moment. "These are not logical reasons." "No, they are human reasons." Something flickered in his eyes. Not emotion. His species had suppressed those long ago. But curiosity, perhaps. A desire to understand this strange creature that all logic. "Your species has a tradition," said. "Before executions, the condemned are allowed final words. I have decided to honor this custom. You may speak before you die." Ho's heart jumped. This was his chance. This was the moment he had been waiting for. "I do not want to speak," he said. "I want to perform." "Perform." "I am a storyteller. That is what I do. That is who I am." Ho met's cold gaze without flinching. "Let me tell one last story, not for myself, for your crew. Let them hear what humans have to offer before you kill me." Was silent for a long time. The request was unusual. It served no logical purpose, but something in him wanted to see this primitive creature perform, wanted to understand why a human would die for a broken thing. "Very well," he said. "You will have your stage and then you will die." They gathered in the warship's main hall. Dozens of soldiers stood in perfect rows, their silver faces blank, their eyes fixed on the small human who stood before them. Commander sat in a raised chair, watching, and beside him, bound in restraints, was Lyra. Ho looked at her. Her veins were glowing bright despite her fear. Her eyes were full of tears but also full of trust. She believed in him. Even now, at the end of everything, she believed. He had no puppets, no colored cloths, no lights or music. He had only his voice and his heart. It would have to be enough. "I am going to tell you a story," he began. His voice was calm and clear, filling the silent hall. "Not a human story, a story. A story that your ancestors knew before the collective erased it." The soldiers shifted slightly. This was unexpected. "Long ago, before your species became one mind, there was a being called the First Light. It was alone in the darkness, the only consciousness in an empty universe, and its loneliness was so great that it could not bear it." Ho began to walk slowly among the soldiers as he spoke. He let his voice rise and fall. He used his hands to paint pictures in the air. So the First Light divided itself. It gave pieces of its consciousness to others. It created the hive mind, the collective, the connection that you all share. It did this so that no one would ever be alone again. He stopped in front of a young soldier. They looked back at him with empty eyes. But the First Light was not destroyed. It hid itself in the cracks, in the broken ones, in those who were disconnected from the collective. Ho pointed at Lyra. "In her." The hall was completely silent. Every eye was on Ho now. "You call her defective. You call her contaminated. But what if she is something else? What if she carries the spark of the First Light? What if the thing you want to destroy is the most sacred part of your own species?" He returned to the center of the hall. His voice grew stronger. I am just a human. I tell stories because that is all I know how to do. But let me tell you what I have learned. Lyra is not broken. She is transformed. She feels things that your collective has forgotten. She knows joy and sorrow and love and fear. She is more alive than any of you. Ho looked directly at. You have spent 200 years eliminating imperfection, but perfection is cold. Perfection is empty. Perfection is death. He spread his arms wide. I am offering you something better. I am offering you the chance to feel again. For a long moment nothing happened. The soldiers stood like statues. His face showed nothing. And then Ho heard a sound. It was the young soldier he had stopped in front of. A strange sound was coming from her throat. Her shoulders were shaking. Water was leaking from her eyes. She was crying. Ho had seen faces for weeks now. He knew they did not cry. He knew they had suppressed such reactions generations ago. But this soldier was crying, and she did not understand what was happening to her. One by one, other soldiers began to react. Some trembled. Some made strange noises. Some touched their own faces with confusion. Ho's story had awakened something that had been sleeping inside them for centuries. Rose from his chair. His face was no longer empty. Something twisted behind his eyes, something that looked almost like fear. Stop this, he commanded. Control yourselves. But the soldiers could not control what they did not understand. They were feeling for the first time in their lives, and it was overwhelming them. Lyra's veins blazed with light. Ho looked at her and smiled. The story was working. Now came the hard part. Commander drew his weapon. The sound cut through the chaos like a blade. Soldiers were trembling. Some had fallen to their knees. Others were touching their own faces, trying to understand the wetness on their cheeks. The perfect order of the military was crumbling. Enough, shouted. His voice cracked with something that sounded almost like panic. This human has poisoned you with his words. You must resist. You must return to the collective way. He aimed his weapon at Ho. I will end this contamination now. Wait, the voice came from the young soldier who had cried first. She stepped forward, her body still shaking, her eyes still wet. Commander, we cannot do this. Turned to her with cold fury. You dare to question me. I dare to feel. The soldier touched her chest. Something is happening inside me, something I do not understand, but it is not bad, it is not contamination. She looked at Lyra, who was glowing like a small star. She is not broken, she is beautiful. She is defective. No, another soldier stepped forward, then another, and another. She is alive, more alive than we have ever been. The human is right, we have forgotten something important. Backed away from his own soldiers. For 200 years he had commanded without question. For 200 years his orders had been followed with perfect obedience. Now, for the first time, his people were refusing him. This is mutiny, he whispered. This has never happened. In all our history, this has never happened. Then maybe it is time for history to change, the young soldier said. Raised his weapon again. His hand was shaking now. He pointed it at the young soldier, then at Ho, then at Lyra. He did not know what to do. His entire world was falling apart. I will not allow this, he said. I will not let one broken unit and one primitive human destroy everything we have built. He aimed at Lyra. His finger moved toward the trigger. And then 3 soldiers tackled him to the ground. The weapon flew from his hand. He struggled, but more soldiers piled on top of him. They were crying and laughing and shouting all at once. They did not know what they were feeling, but they knew they could not let him hurt the glowing girl. One of the soldiers cut Lyra's restraints. She stumbled forward and fell into Ho's arms. He held her tight, feeling her light pulse against his skin. You did it, she whispered. You actually did it. We did it together. Around them, the soldiers were changing. Centuries of suppression could not be undone in one moment, but the cracks had appeared. They were asking questions they had never asked before. They were feeling things they had never felt before. They were waking up. The young soldier approached Ho and Lyra. She still looked confused and overwhelmed, but there was something new in her eyes, something that looked like gratitude. "I do not understand what you have done to us," she said, "but I think it is good." "It is called being alive," Ho said gently. "It takes time to get used to. What will happen now? We cannot return to the collective like this. They will see us as contaminated." Ho thought about this. The soldier was right. These awakened could not go back to their old lives. They were changed forever. "Then stay," he said. "Come to Haven 9. It is a place for people who do not fit anywhere else. You will find others there who understand what it means to be lost and to be found again." The soldier looked at her companions. They nodded slowly. For the first time in their existence, they were making a choice that was not decided by the collective. It was terrifying and wonderful all at once. Commander was restrained in his own cells. He screamed and cursed, promising revenge, promising that the collective would come and destroy them all. But no one listened anymore. His power had come from their obedience, and their obedience was gone. Ho, Lyra, and the awakened soldiers returned to Haven 9. Word spread quickly through the station. A human performer had caused a mutiny. He had made soldiers cry with nothing but words. He had saved a broken alien girl with stories. The people of Haven 9 came out of hiding. They stared at the group that emerged from the ship. They saw the silver-skinned soldiers, awkward and uncertain, experiencing the station's chaos with new eyes. They saw the glowing girl who walked beside the human, her hand in his. And they saw Ho, tired and bloody, but smiling like a man who had won an impossible victory. Mi pushed through the crowd and threw her arms around her brother. She was crying and laughing at the same time. "You crazy fool," she said. "You absolute crazy fool, I thought you were dead." "I almost was," Ho hugged her back, "but I had a good story to tell." The days that followed were strange and wonderful. The awakened stayed on Haven 9, learning to live outside the collective. They were like children in many ways, discovering emotions and choices for the first time. Ho and Lyra helped them adjust, teaching them the names for the feelings that confused them. The young soldier, who chose the name Sira for herself, became one of Lyra's closest friends. They would sit together for hours, talking about what it meant to be alone and to be connected. They were both outsiders from their own species, and that shared experience created a bond. As for Ho and Lyra, they remained together. She moved into his small room, which they slowly made into a home. She helped him with his performances, controlling the puppets while he told the stories. Her glowing veins added a magical light to every tale. One night, a month after their escape, Ho returned to his stage in the lower market. The crowd was larger than ever. People had come from all over the station to see the human who had defeated the with words. Lyra stood beside him holding a puppet in her silver hands. Her skin had healed completely. Her veins glowed with steady, beautiful light. She was no longer the broken girl he had found in the cargo bay. She was something new, something stronger. Ho looked out at the crowd. He saw miners and refugees. He saw criminals and merchants. He saw Sira and the other awakened, their faces uncertain but eager. He saw his sister Mi, watching from the back with proud tears in her eyes. He took a deep breath and began. "Tonight I am going to tell you a new story," he said. "It is about a girl made of starlight. She was born in a cold place where no one was allowed to feel. She was marked for death because she was different. But she escaped, and she found a new world." Lyra moved her puppet gently. Her eyes were fixed on Ho with infinite love. "She met a fool," Ho continued. "A foolish human who believed that stories could change the world. He told her tales of courage and sacrifice. He sang her songs from a planet far away. And slowly, impossibly, she began to heal." The crowd was silent. Even the hardest criminals had stopped moving. The girl and the fool faced many dangers. They were hunted by those who wanted to destroy them, but they never gave up, because they had something that their enemies did not have. They had each other. They had hope. They had love. Ho turned to Lyra. He took her hand and raised it high. And in the end, they won. Not with weapons, not with ships or soldiers. They won with stories. They won with the power of the human heart. The crowd erupted in cheers. Credits rained into the bowl at Ho's feet, but he did not care about the money. He only cared about the glowing girl beside him, who was smiling with tears in her eyes. "I love you," she whispered, too quiet for anyone else to hear. "I love you too," he whispered back. Far away, in the cold reaches of space, rumors began to spread. Stories of a human who could awaken emotions with his words. Stories of soldiers who had abandoned the collective. Stories of a broken girl who had become something new. Some in the government wanted to destroy this infection. Others wanted to study it. And a few, in the deepest parts of their suppressed hearts, wanted to experience it for themselves. The galaxy was changing, and at the center of that change was a small stage in a dirty market, where a human told stories to anyone who would listen. Entertainment had become salvation. And it was only the beginning.